Hello, welcome back to 1874. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined by the Athletics Aston Villa correspondent, Jacob Tanswell, because Jacob's brought out a really important read today on The Athletic with Aston Villa's midfielder, Ross Barkley. Ross opened up to Jacob and talked through a variety of issues in his life. And Jacob, just how was it to sit down with Ross and have this chat?
Yeah, I'm firstly very, very proud of the interview and how it's gone. Obviously, it's very important that a footballer like Ross, who's in the top flight, he's very established, opened up about some of the problems he's previously had, and it was a really honest interview. So we talked about him going teetotal, therapy, but also basically a wide range of interview from the start to finish. Really, I was there with him for around an hour. He talked about obviously being that teenage prodigy at Everton, going to Chelsea, the frustrations that he had at Chelsea, the incidences that he had going on nights out, being punished by Chelsea, being caught, let out late at night, the well publicised things that are already out there, being a young local lad when he went in Merseyside, and then being recognised and that leading to trouble as well. So yeah, it's not always every day you get a top flight current Premier League footballer who's willing to speak so openly. But full credit, and I'm proud of how the interview went.
Yeah, quite timely because obviously he's just come back into the fold at Villa, come back into the first team, scored at the weekend. Everything on the face of it is going well in his life. He's Premier League footballer. He's played for his country, scoring goals in the Premier League. He's just had a baby. But as with a lot of talented footballers, actually, and let's not beat around the bush here, Ross Barkley is a very naturally gifted footballer. Like when he came onto the scene, everyone's like, it's the next Gaza, it's the next Wayne Rooney. This was a player who was really hyped up as a youngster, and he's had a lot of differing things happen to him in his career. He's had peaks and troughs like a lot of footballers do. Very important member of Villa squad. I thought he was a really good pickup last season, had some good moments for us, and then injuries kind of killed him. Has come back into it in recent weeks and performed well off the bench. We spoke about him a little bit in the last show that we did post Bournemouth. But to have a players who are talented are often flawed in some way. And I think it's quite refreshing to have someone like that come and openly speak about problems that they've had in their life. So credit to him.
Absolutely, and you see with a lot of footballers, but not just footballers, cautionary tales about celebrities, singers. When you're a teenage sensation almost and being tipped for big things, the pressure on you is a massive straight away. You're not equipped to deal with it, really, are you? In terms of you're still young, you're still developing physically, mentally. So the struggles that Barkley talked about, I was, you when you approach an interview, you're never quite sure of how it's going to go. Obviously you have topics you want to cover and questions you want to do, but it's the longer and more you do an interview, the more you realise that you want it to be conversational, and you might pick up on something that someone says, and you might want to delve a little bit deeper into that. And to his credit, I thought Barkley came across really mature, and he spoke honestly. He brought up subjects I hadn't even thought about in terms of his he's not regular, but he's had therapy throughout his career, sports psychologist, things like that. And you got, like you say, Dan, you got to remember, this was a kid that was on this bench at Everton at 16, who, as he talks about, the likes of Man United, Arsenal wanted him when he was younger than that. He was a boy tipped for huge things. He even puts in the piece how Duncan Ferguson used to drop him home after training because his mum couldn't pick him up, or David Moyes would come round and offer reassurance that after he broke his leg in a triple leg break, that he was still on path to get into the first team. So Barkley was tipped for big things, had huge pressure on him, and that pressure only escalated as he got older because more people would want him. He played for England at 19. He had all these things going on. He was the guy that was supposed to be, as he says in the interview, the Everton equivalent of Steven Gerrard, being the guy that's one of their own. And then he obviously talks about going to Everton. He talks about, going to Chelsea. And then when he comes back to Merseyside, the abuse and the shouting he would receive when he'd be going at the traffic lights in his car, or at a coffee shop with his mother. So, yeah, it was I felt quite insightful and quite illuminating interview. And yeah, it's one I'm most proud of.
this is a man that in the article talks about having challenges and how he's faced those challenges and certain things that he's turned to during that time. And he's had challenges at Villa as well, particularly this season as well. What's his relationship like with Emery, and how's Emery handled all this stuff?
Yeah, so Barkley talks about how, obviously, if you remember, he got injured in that West Ham game in the FA Cup. And initially, people thought it was only one injury. He actually picked up 2 injuries in his knee and his calf, and they're pretty significant injuries. And a lot of people didn't know that at the time. What he says about Emery is that Emery, in preparation to signing him, watched 12 of his games, and he was quite honest. As Barkley says, he doesn't bullshit. He said, "I can't quite believe the career path you've had. A player of your talent should have had, the career path he's had in terms of going abroad to Nice, playing at Luton. However good he was, he should have been operating at a high level." So they share an honesty, and I think with Barkley, he prefers and enjoys communication, clear communication and clarity. He doesn't feel like he got that necessarily at times at Chelsea. But at Villa, he likes Emery. I think they've got a good bond, and he knows that if he plays well, he'll play more than he's not, and he's trusted by Emery to play, because Barkley says he takes satisfaction in the case that even if he's on the bench, he's ready from the 10th minute to the 93rd, 94th minute to come on. He's always keeping himself ready on the bench. So I think ideally Barkley would not play more. He would like to play for England again, but he respects Emery, and I think they've got a very good relationship.
Yeah, we spoke about it after the Bournemouth game, that what we like about him is that he can get into a game. It doesn't matter whether he started or not. He can just come off the bench and get straight into the pace and the tempo of that game. And I do think that's a really good trait to have. Not many players actually have that trait, so credit to him. There's like a few kind of big topics in this interview. The kind of first one is that he had a difficult childhood. Can you just talk about that and how he was explaining that to you?
Yeah, so as he goes on to mention, his dad was in and out of his life as a younger boy. His mum was there to look after himself and his sister, who's 7 years younger, so there's quite a bit of an age gap there. And essentially, being a 11-year-old joining Everton and having a mum that was on benefits and struggling really to make ends meet, and growing up in a difficult area such where he would notice a lot of his boys maybe had the temptation to go elsewhere. It was difficult for him. He talks about getting 2 to 3 buses to training, recognizing that Everton were really good. Actually, he calls a lot of his coaches father figures because of the way they helped. And I mentioned at the start, Duncan Ferguson, David Moyes, Alan Stubbs as well was a big help. So you have this incredible mercurial talent who is quite remarkable, actually, how good he was at a young age and how focused he was on football.
Coming through.
Yeah, considering the difficulties he had initially in his life. But with Barkley, I think people got to remember that he came from a different mindset, really. He said that he wanted to break Rooney's record of scoring at 16, and when I was 15 or 16, I wasn't even thinking about being in the first team for a club. You think you just make it through your age group. So he had obviously this mentality, and he would talk about during half term, 12 hours, be it swimming at his Olympic-sized swimming pool nearby, playing on the grass nearby. So I actually think it's quite an extraordinary story. I think footballers get enough credit, really, in terms of some of them come from difficult backgrounds, right? Whether it's in the UK, overseas, and the fact that they're able to not only make professional, but be at the top, like the very, very elite, like Barkley is playing in the Premier League. I think it takes a special type of character and special type of talent and mentality as well in your younger years to get there. So I said this to him during the interview. He was able to reflect, and he was able to recognise the mistakes he's made, which we'll obviously come on to. But he's able to do it whilst he's still in his career. It's not like he's at the end thinking, "Oh, I wish I could have done something differently." He's 31 now, and he's seen some of the mistakes he's made, and I think it shows that he is reflective of those, especially those younger years.
He kind of says he wishes he knew then what he knows now. And footballers always say, it's a short career. It goes quickly. It does feel like he's gone from 16 to 31 quite quickly, but he has still got years left in him. I think he says he wants 6 or 7 years left of his career, so plenty of miles left in the tank for him. Obviously, the biggest thing to come out of the interview, and there's lots of stuff that comes out of it, is the issues that he has with alcohol. Now, even him just speaking about something like that will probably help other people that struggle with similar things. Do you think how hard was it for him to talk about that stuff, to talk about his relationship with alcohol?
I'm sure it was hard, but I must say, in that interview, he came across very courageously in terms of open up. There wasn't, I could ask him about alcohol, and he wouldn't give me short answers. He actually go into detail, and he was reflective. He talked especially about when he was in London at Chelsea, and that in that period where he scored in 3 consecutive games. I think it was around October 2018, and he said, "I should have just carried on maintaining those professional standards." In other words. But he was living in London. He was on his own. His mum was back home. Didn't have a partner at the time, and he would go on nights out. And as he mentions, he says he was punished by Frank Lampard. And I think at that time he probably thought, if I could have my time again, I would do things differently. But yeah, he's mentioned that he's teetotal since the summer. He intends to stay that way. And like he says, if you drink, nothing tends to come out of it good. If you drink quite a lot on nights out, I think, but I tried to put myself in that situation. I'd probably think, you know what, if I was a young guy who everyone was telling me how good I was from very young, like 13, 14, like that young, and then I would move to London on the big contracts, escape the goldfish bubble or goldfish bowl of Merseyside, maybe there was a possibility that I would, take my eye off the ball, maybe, or I would go out and because to fill my time. So yeah, it's good of him, but I don't know if it's more society now, but more people are talking about, especially males, talking about their personal issues, right? You see Tony Adams, who set up a brilliant clinic initiative in recent years and for a long while actually, helping people. Wayne Rooney's talked about it. Jack Grealish has talked about their specific issues or their experiences with alcohol. So I don't think the stigma's as full on as it used to be, and I think Barkley really explains and elaborates really well on it, and as well as a range of other themes.
I should say at this point, you're listening to this podcast now or watching it, but you should check out Jacob's article as well, because it will obviously go into bigger detail in the piece than we're going into in this podcast, because we obviously want people to read Jacob's article. We don't want to give everything away that's in the article on the podcast. People have deal with problems in different ways, and he's obviously tried to do some of the right things by virtue of seeing a therapist and speaking to someone, which is obviously advisable when you're struggling. But then I guess you've got the bad side of that, of dealing with certain things in your life by turning to drink as well. My guess, reading between the lines, would be that having a young child and becoming a dad for the first time is a big driver in what he's doing now and making that decision to go teetotal.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, and he mentioned that he wants to be the best father he can be, and he obviously mentioned that what he wants to do now is go home and that type of thing. I think it's given him a focus really, and he's realised what's important. And it helps, right? You're older, you're more mature, you've got a partner, you've got a child, you've got responsibilities, probably responsibilities that he didn't have in London when he moved to Chelsea 24. So yeah, it probably changes your outlook, which you'll soon discover, Dan.
I'm absolutely bricking it. So yeah, I can relate to it being like a weird time as well. And I guess if you have got stuff that's problems going on during that time, that almost makes it harder, I would guess.
Yeah, but obviously he had a child last December now, so once he turned 30, which probably a better time to do it because you kind of know yourself a little bit more. But maybe he's made that decision in the summer to go teetotal, and I think it'll help. So obviously prolong his career, hopefully, but also get that consistency that he needs. Because, like I said, he's had difficulty since coming to the Midlands, right? So now I think it's important that he wanted to do it, and this is how if you read the piece, how it ends really, in terms of he spent all this time, and the interview largely centres on looking backwards and reflecting on your career. But at the same time, he's only 31, so now he wants to, like I say, harbours ambitions to play for England again, harbours ambitions to start games and play more for Villa, and do and achieve a lot more. He says, winning a trophy at Villa is a huge priority. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what he does. You've seen recent games, right? He's not only been seen as a number six by Emery, which is obviously what Emery sees as his best position, but he can come on and really impact games in the number 10 role as well. So I think he's got more to give at Villa.
I think it does. He, I can't remember. I've read it, but I can't remember. Does he? Because we've almost had two versions of Ross Barkley. You can almost forget that he's been at the club before during COVID times. He started like an absolute house on fire and looked like he was going to be the real deal for Villa, and then he got a bad injury and he tailed off, and we never really saw that version of him again. But I've got to say, this time round, I'm not just saying this because we're talking about him. I think I've said it previously, that I feel like we've got a better version of him, a more switched on player that's been around the block a bit more and a bit more streetwise. And kind of, although he's had these problems, I think the version that we've seen at Villa has been a good version of him this time round.
Yeah, he talks about his game understanding, game awareness, and in his words, he said it's top. And I think that's what you see from him, really. You see that a guy that knows his game, very intelligent on the ball, reads the play very well. And he mentioned that first time at Villa where, yeah, he started well. I remember when I was covering the Slamson Villa game and I thought, who's this guy? Like, is this Barkley? Because he looks really, really sharp. And then he obviously had that injury. And yeah, he just said he just couldn't get back to those levels, couldn't get that rhythm. Obviously, a difficult season for the team in terms of coming back into the team and really being seen as one of the more creative outlets with Grealish at the time. But now I think what Emery likes is that he likes players over 30 because of that reason, in terms of their experience, they know their game. And Barkley, as soon as I saw him in that first couple of games when he re-signed, I just thought this looks like a different player in terms of he can control the tempo from the number six position. He's still got great technique, and I think he's a player that can play in quite a few positions still.
Yeah, just he scored at the weekend, obviously, and you could almost see like how popular he is as well. Like the players, the people that were on the bench and warming up on the sidelines, everyone made a beeline to celebrate with him as well. So he's clearly a well liked and popular member of the squad, and just credit to him for opening up. Really, as I've said, it's easy for footballers not to open up for fear of ridicule. He has to go and play at a football stadium in a couple of weeks' time again. Football fans are not forgiving. You go away from home to a place like Leeds, it's very, very likely that someone shouts something at you, and that can put people off coming out and talking about issues that they've had. So just credit to Ross Barkley for coming out and being so open and honest with you. And I guess that's probably the biggest takeaway for you is that he was just so open and honest.
Yeah, as I say, you're never sure. Obviously, he would have been aware of what we were going to discuss, but you're never sure of how much a footballer or how little would expand on answers and how much he would want to give. It's their prerogative, right?
Yeah.
But as soon as I started speaking to him, I thought, yeah, he's really insightful. He wanted to explain and give context. I probably didn't give him enough credit actually beforehand to think actually he's very willing to elaborate and talk in detail. So I think it makes for a good piece and quite an insightful read that I think people will enjoy. I don't want to say too much because I want people to read it, but
yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's rare for a current footballer especially, to talk about these subjects, and I appreciate how difficult they might be. But yeah, like I say, it's about him obviously going to total therapy, but also a huge insight into leaving Everton. And I think lots of fans will probably be interested in reading this because it's not just Villa based; it's a whole rundown of his career, really. So yeah, I'm grateful that I managed to spend roughly an hour with him, and yeah, hopefully he can now just look forward.
Yeah, and even just by him speaking to you, that could help one person. And I'm sure I don't know the reason for doing it, but I'm sure one of the big things is that if a footballer speaking like that helps one person as well, that's a really positive thing to come out of a negative. So once again, fair play to Ross Barkley. I'm sure the whole Villa fan base wishes him well, and we look forward to seeing him on the pitch after the international break. Jacob, thank you for coming on and talking to me about that. Not easy for you to kind of rehash an interview without giving too much away because you want people to read the piece. So appreciate you coming on and speaking openly about it as well.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Anything else coming up this week that we should watch out for?
Maybe something. Obviously, Javier has been a big talking point, hasn't he?
Yeah.
So we might be doing something with the Liverpool guys on that. But I'll be having a long weekend off. So, as somebody as a YouTube comment mentioned, and rightly so, I do look very tired. My hair's overgrown. I've got loads of greys coming through. I'm starting to have a beard, so I just need a weekend. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is 2 days growth. I need 2 days. I need 2 or 3 days just to switch off, really, with no contracts being announced or being accelerated.
No, surely all the contracts are done now, aren't they? There's no more contracts to be done. All the ones you kind of alluded to in the summer have happened now. So I
for the time being. For the time being.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I won't ask you to come on any podcast for a few days, so you don't need to worry about that. You've done your duty for the week. So thank you again for joining me. And just once again, credit to Ross Barkley and fair play to him. And we all wish him all the very best. Right then, thank you very much for watching or listening to this show. When we spoke about something important, it feels a bit futile going and asking people to subscribe and all that jazz. So I'm just not going to do it on this occasion. Just want to say thank you very much for all the support on the channel, and thank you very much for watching and listening. Thank you to Jacob again. There'll be plenty more content coming up through the international break, so do watch out for it. Keep an eye on our socials. I did just say I wasn't going to plug anything and then just went straight into the routine of plugging. So apologies for that. All that's left to say is an up the Villa from me and an up the Villa from Jacob Tanswell.
Up the Villa.